Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Michael Sabatoni. I am president of the Rhode Island Building and Construction Trades Council. Represent climbing over 9,000 men and women in the building trades in and around the state of Rhode Island, and we're here to strongly oppose this legislation. And I'd like to start with just asking a simple question. Why? Why do you need this legislation? It's got nothing to do with the siting or the complexity of the siting board. It has nothing to do with policy. It has nothing to do with the legality of it. It has everything to do, to read the yellow signs behind me and the T-shirts that the fine residents of the town of Burrillville are wearing, which is classic NIMBYism, not in my backyard, no new power plant. Peel it away to its most simplistic. That's what this whole issue is about. Not in my backyard. Somewhere else. Put it somewhere else. You heard reference at the beginning by the sponsor of other operations across the state. TF Green Airport in Warwick. Department of Corrections in Cranston. Central Landfill in Johnston, which I happen to be an expert on since I've lived in that town for 49 years by choice, even though I could live in any other community I want because I love that town. I've grown up with dealing with the environmental issues, the town issues, the politics, the emotion of that facility since I was a young boy. Born and raised about less than 5 miles from it. I currently live less than 4 miles from it. Town never got a say. Town never got a chance for voter initiative, a voter referendum to continue to accept the other 38 communities' trash. Never got a vote. Sent our reps and senators down here every year. Stop, cap, do the best we can with it every year. Fail. Trash has to go somewhere. 2 years ago, involved with the expansion of TF Green Airport. NIMBYism in the city of Warwick. Airport, noisy, inconvenient for the residents. Airport's got to go somewhere. Economic engine. As goes TF Green, goes the state of Rhode Island. Longer runway, longer flights. Companies look towards that when they want to relocate in Rhode Island. All the other initiatives you're going through with the budget, all the tools in the toolkit with commerce don't mean anything if we don't have a modern infrastructure, modern transportation. This is classic NIMBYism. The gas infrastructure in the state of Rhode Island is in the town of Burrillville. Gas line goes right through it. Compressor station is there. Main connection to the grid is there as well. It's not by choice, spun the wheel and said, looks good up in the northwest corner. That's where the infrastructure is. I know what it's like to deal with these emotions. I deal with them on a statewide level when we're in other communities looking to expand and build, but also back in the town of Johnston. I also I'm the chairman of the Resource Recovery Corporation. I got involved on that board to try and make it better for the residents in the town that I live in and that I love. And it's not easy. It's emotional. It's difficult. It consumes that town from time to time politically. I choose to sit on that board to make it better. And I try and balance what's in the best interest of the town, as well as do my duty as a commissioner to what's in the best interest of the state. And I'm going to ask you to do the same here today. And I don't mean any disrespect to the residents of the town of Burrillville, none whatsoever. I commend them for their compassion. I commend them for getting involved in government. But at the end of the day, leaders need to make decisions. That's why you're elected as leaders. Every year we send out questionnaires about voter initiatives, voter referendums. Voter initiatives stymie branches of government, undermine local government. Town Council of Burrillville opposes this legislation. In their letter, quote, it weakens the town council's ability to protect its residents and obtain financial, compensation for hosting a proposed power plant. It strips the town council from negotiating leverage that can force Invenergy to compensate the town. It jeopardizes efforts to put financial safeguards in place for residents near the proposed power plant and compromises an agreement for the decommissioning of the plant in the future. Those are pretty strong words by local elected officials in that town. So we implore you to do the right thing, oppose this legislation for what I've mentioned, and then in addition, for the awful precedent this would send going forward. Anytime any town or city, for that matter, has NIMBYism occurring in their local community, you'll be doing this over and over and over again. Whether it's a highway, whether it's a sewage treatment plant, whether it's a power plant, whether it's any type of inconvenience where people do not want it in their backyard. This is a classic case of NIMBYism, and we implore you to oppose it and let the EVS do its job. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments for this witness? Senator Nesselbush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, thank you so much for your testimony. I found it very informational. In general, I also sit on the health committee, and I would call myself against NIMBYism because I hear it all the time with, citing group homes or halfway houses and things like that. And, I do believe that sometimes the greater will of the entire state has to prevail. I was moved to co-sponsor this legislation because exactly this. I wanted to hear more information about why Burrillville. I was moved because I, heard from some residents of Burrillville, et cetera, that they already had a power plant, and that why are you going to give us two when, there are many communities in the state that they felt, the people who contacted me, that would be better situated for a siting of that, and that would be their first one. I had some people sort of mention to me by project the things that the state of Rhode Island had done for some communities that don't host a power plant or have to deal with the blight or the noise. And so, though, again, in general, I'm against NIMBYism, and I am very much in favor of improving our infrastructure and the jobs that it would create. I want cranes in the sky as badly as you do and as the governor does. So I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more, because that is my sticking point. And you did touch on it, that the infrastructure is there. So do you know how much more it might cost if we were to start from scratch, if you will, in another community that may not have a power plant or may not have the dump? If we came to Johnston and said, now Johnston has the dump,
the landfill.
There you go. And next to the landfill, we were going to put a power plant. I would expect the people of Johnston to say, hey, we're making our contribution. Yep. And that was the part that moved me when I heard from some of the residents of Burrillville say, we already are making our contribution. And again, I'm not going to suggest where they said it belongs, but they had many other places in the state that they were trying to convince me, someone who doesn't have that knowledge, that it would be better sited in this community or that community, including they were referencing my own community, which already has, Pawtucket has a small power plant. So if you could speak a little bit to why you don't think this is onerous on Burrillville, and if what and again, I realize you are not a representative of the siting board, but how much it might cost to additional, because obviously if there's going to be millions of dollars of additional expenditures for infrastructure and other things that are already in place, that sort of goes on the balance column of making some sense to add on to it. But if you could speak to those issues, that would be helpful to me.
Well, first of all, we not only have a landfill, but we also have two power plants right next door to the landfill. So we're doing over and above. And if necessary, if there was the ability to put a third one there, I'm sure Mayor Policina would welcome that as well for the taxes that it would bring in for the town of Johnston. As far as where you site certain projects, it has to do a lot with the infrastructure. It costs a lot more money to connect to different portions of the grid. Like I mentioned, the gas line runs right through the northwest corner of the state, in this case Burrillville, then travels up through Massachusetts, down through Connecticut and New York. So the gas line, main line infrastructure goes right there through Burrillville, hits that compressor station, and that gets what we call into a distribution system that then services the other communities. The further away you get from that infrastructure, the more things cost. And as far as, when they're looking to put things in certain places, all of those things are taken into consideration.
Excuse me, Mike. Mr. Chairman, may I? Certainly. Just a brief follow-up question. Is there no other major gas line that runs through any other part of the state? Is it the main gas line through Burrillville, and there's not? High-pressure
gas line runs through Burrillville. That's the only part that it hits the state of Rhode Island.
That's the only part.
Only place. Everywhere else, it's distribution, and probably Michael's better to answer that than I am with regards to the distribution system of natural gas. But the main line, natural gas line that feeds the whole state of Rhode Island, comes through and hits Burrillville in that corner from Connecticut. That's where it is. And that's why the compressor station is there. Like I said, it's not because people spun the wheel and said, this is the best place we want to put it. But you're probably going to ask, well, why is it in the northwest corner? Because
exactly my question.
It's a rural area. It's a lot less expensive to put that type of infrastructure in rural areas than it is to start digging up city streets where there is urban population to put this type of infrastructure in place.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Senator Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize if I may go back and ask Mr. Ryan one more question because I neglected to ask him a question based on his testimony, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ryan, you had expressed a concern, I think it's an important one, as to whether or not changing the composition of the EFSB would impact presently pending matters before there, some of which are, as you pointed out, are significant both to the delivery of energy to our state as well as, frankly, some economic issues as well. Has GRID done any kind of legal analysis on what the impact would be if the board changed midstream on those matters pending before it at this time?
We haven't done any legal analysis. All we do know is that if we had to start over, it would put in abeyance some major projects.
And just incidentally, the chairman's insight and advice consent is important to remember as well.